Everybody see that? Okay,
Yep.
good. Okay, good afternoon, everybody. I'm so excited to be here with everyone today. As Kara said, I'm an assistant professor in the Maryland Institute for Applied Environmental Health in the School of Public Health at Maryland. And I cannot wait to share my results with you from our RANG study, Reducing Anxiety with Nature and Gardening. So I'm an environmental health researcher, as Kara said, and a water quality specialist. And I focus on evaluating different water sources for the presence of bacteria, as well as developing the most effective ways to communicate about water quality with mostly agricultural audiences, as well as the general public. And I do that work through my WOW lab, which is the Water Quality Outreach and Wellness Lab in the School of Public Health. And I wanted to tell you a little bit about one of the projects that we focus on in the WOW Lab, which is the RIPER program, Rooftop Runoff Irrigating Produce Eaten Raw. And in this program, what we're really interested in learning is whether it's safe from a food safety perspective to use roof harvested rainwater or other collected rainwater to grow fruits and vegetables that we eat raw. And this is a great project, partly because of the many collaborations that make it possible. So I'm in the School of Public Health here at Maryland, but we also have collaborators on RIPER at Hood College in Frederick, Maryland, as well as at USDA, ARS. And that group of collaborators has really been focused on work in Frederick, Maryland. But we've recently expanded to include collaborators in the University of Maryland Extension through a grant from the Chesapeake Bay Trust and the Baltimore City Department of Public Works to expand what we're doing into Baltimore City. And then we're also working to try to expand even further with our collaborators at the University of the District of Columbia. So in this project, what we're doing is we're collecting these roof harvested rainwater samples, as well as soil and produce samples that are contacted by the water. And so in the summer of 2019, we were collecting samples from two different sites in Frederick, Maryland. One is this top site that you can see on your screen, which is at the Religious Coalition for Emergency Human Needs. And the second site was on Hood College's campus, which is shown here on the bottom. And at both of these sites, they were using these really specially designed systems to collect roof harvested rainwater, which is water coming off of the roof, and then taking the first flush water, which is usually the most contaminated with heavy metals or bacteria, and then putting that water aside and using the rest of the water to put it through this subsurface irrigation system. So it's going through a series of wicks as well as different layers of filtering material before it reaches the produce that it's irrigating. And what we found, thanks to the work of one of our PhD students, Michelle Morgado, who's been helping me with the data analysis, is that when we look at all of the samples that have been collected, what we're finding is when we look at the water samples, which are shown by these blue bars here, they're below FSMA irrigation water standards. And these are the standards that growers typically use to determine if their water is safe. So we're looking specifically at one type of bacteria, E. coli, which is used in the standard. And again, we can see the water is below these standards. We also, again, collected soil and produce. And although we see E. coli in our soil samples, E. coli is ubiquitous in the environment, so we would expect that. But when we look at the produce, which is what people are actually consuming, you can see or actually can't see here, is that it's either low or no detects. So we're finding little to no bacteria in the samples. And then when we kind of look at it in a big picture, we can see that a little less than half of our water samples, 78% of our soil samples, and 95% of the produce samples did not have any E. coli in them. So we're really excited about these results and what that means for home gardeners, as well as just growers more generally about the safety of using this type of water. So I had planned in the summer of 2020 to go out in the field again and start collecting more samples and again expand to Baltimore City. But like many people's work, my work was interrupted by the COVID-19 pandemic. And my usual field sampling and lab analysis had to be put on hold. And I found myself searching for ways to use my training as an environmental health professional to find solutions, and specifically to determine if there are mental health benefits from gardening, and if so, to share these solutions and these findings with others. And the reason that this is so important right now is because the COVID-19 pandemic is impacting all of us and all of our mental health. Whether we've battled the virus ourselves or helped taking care of friends and family who have been sick, or just changed our daily routines with things like wearing masks, attending lots of Zoom meetings like this one, or searching for the vaccine. All of these changes impact our mental health. And we know from a growing body of literature that nature can improve both our mental and our physical health. And the graph that we're looking at here is showing a study that measured cortisol levels, and cortisol levels correlate with stress responses in our body. So in this study, they had participants that were measured before and after walking, either in an urban environment or forest environment. And what we can see from the results shown here is that there were decreases in both environments after participants walked. So this is the effect of exercise. But what I've outlined here in red is that participants who walked in a forest environment had significantly lower cortisol levels than those who walked in urban environments. And in fact, researchers have also shown that even just looking at nature can decrease our stress responses. So what we're looking at here are cortisol concentrations of people who have either walked in forest environments, shown with this green line, or urban environments, shown with the dotted red line. And we can see that there are lower cortisol concentrations from those who were, viewing forest scenes. And the hypothesis for why we might have these particularly mental health benefits from nature all go back to the attention restoration theory. And in that theory, Kaplan hypothesized that being in nature increased involuntary attention, which requires less mental energy than direct tasks, things like working or business meetings or reading or writing. When we look specifically at the health benefits of gardening, there's more limited information. So a meta-analysis that was conducted looking at all studies evaluating the health benefits of gardening as of 2017 found 22 studies. 16 of those looked specifically at mental health, and only 3 evaluated the impacts of gardening on anxiety. So with our RANK study, Reducing Anxiety with Nature and Gardening, we wanted to address these knowledge gaps. And we had 3 main questions. The first was, what's the prevalence of anxiety during the COVID-19 as of the summer of 2020? We also wanted to know, have there been changes in gardening and outdoor activities during the pandemic? And then our third question is about if gardening and outdoor activities are actually associated with different levels of anxiety. So to do this, we developed a 36-question survey, and we distributed that survey through the Master Gardener Network as well as different social media platforms. And we asked questions that could answer those 3 main research questions I just showed you. We asked about gardening activities, such as the question shown here. How much time have you spent gardening over the last 2 weeks? We also asked about outdoor activities, such as the second question shown here. Have you done any type of outdoor walking, hiking, backpacking, or camping over the last 2 weeks? And we also asked about changes from the pandemic, like the third question here. Since the shelter-in-place orders for the COVID-19 pandemic began, have you spent more time in your home garden than last year? We also asked specifically about experiences with COVID-19, like the second to last question here, has anyone in your family experienced any COVID-19 symptoms? And then included within our survey was the GAD-7 scale, and that's the Generalized Anxiety Disorder 7 scale, which is a series of 7 questions that captures self-reported information about anxiety symptoms. And so that is one of those questions is listed here on the bottom of your screen. Over the last 2 weeks, how often have you been bothered by the following problems? Feeling nervous, anxious, or on edge? And then on the survey, our participants could tell us how frequently they felt that way. So the RANK study is a snapshot in time of anxiety, of gardening, and of outdoor activities. And we had over 1,000 responses to our survey from participants in over 35 US states, almost all of whom were gardening at the time that they took the survey. And what we found when we looked at anxiety is, yes, there is more anxiety during the COVID-19 pandemic, and more compared to the last time that there was a large-scale survey of anxiety, which took place from 2001 to 2003 through Harvard Medical School through the National Comorbidity Study Replication. And there was an increase from 19% of individuals reporting anxiety during that 2001 to 2003 study compared to 46% of our rank participants. So almost half of our participants were reporting anxiety. And we saw significantly higher levels of anxiety in females and individuals who are 18 to 29 years old. And you can see from this graph that these are similar patterns that they saw in 2001 to 2003. But again, we saw significant increases during our rank results. We also saw increases in the number of people who were gardening. 81% of our respondents said that they were gardening more during the summer of 2020 compared to the summer of 2019. And people were also spending more time outside, specifically on weekdays. What this graph is showing is that more people were spending more time outside on weekdays, and less people were spending little to no time outside compared to the previous summer. Our participants also highly valued gardening and nature as stress reduction techniques. They ranked gardening and nature activities as the two most extremely important stress reduction techniques, outranking connecting with friends and family, meditation, and even exercise. And knowing that our participants valued gardening so highly for stress reduction, we wanted to see if there were differences in anxiety levels between gardeners and non-gardeners. And what we saw is that there were lower levels of anxiety among our gardeners compared to our non-gardeners, but these findings were not statistically significant. What was significant were differences in anxiety scores based on time spent gardening. So this was true for both time spent in the garden over the last 2 weeks, shown in this graph on the left, as well as amount of gardening experience measured in either months or years. And you can see this really nice decrease here in the average anxiety score as experienced gardening increases. And we also saw significant decreases in anxiety scores as time spent outdoors on weekdays increased. So again, you can see this decrease in anxiety scores as the amount of time spent outdoors, specifically on weekdays, increased. And we also wanted to see, could we predict the odds of having anxiety using the variables that we collected information on in our survey? And in fact, we found 6 significant risk factors. 50 to 69-year-olds and 70 to 89-year-olds had lower odds of having anxiety compared to 18 to 29-year-olds. Males had lower odds of having anxiety than females. And interestingly, our participants who lived in Texas had lower odds of having anxiety than those who lived in Maryland. Individuals who reported changes in gardening since the COVID-19 pandemic or picnicking in the last 2 weeks actually had higher odds of having anxiety. And we hypothesized that this increase, the increased odds of having anxiety from those who reported changes in gardening during the pandemic are people who are already using gardening to treat their own anxiety. So looking at our findings overall, there are a few key things I want to emphasize. First, there's increased anxiety. There's more anxiety during the COVID-19 pandemic than has been reported before. But those who spent more time gardening and more time outside on weekdays had lower levels of anxiety. And because several of our predictor factors for having anxiety were gender, age, or even place related, there's a real need for tailored outreach and education around anxiety, as well as gardening and outdoor activities. And I'm very excited about some of the future areas of research, which are outgrowths of the RANG study. So again, the RANG study is a snapshot in time of what was happening during the summer of 2020. And as the pandemic has continued to evolve, it'll be very interesting to determine if our activities and anxiety has continued to change too, and also to be able to capture some of that temporal relationship about which came first, the gardening and outdoor activities or the anxiety. And there's also several partnerships that we're excited about. One is working with the volunteer coordinator through the University of Maryland Arboretum to look at the effects of gardening and outdoor activities on campus on mental health, including postpartum depression. And then because the RANG study used survey responses and self-reported measures of anxiety and gardening and outdoor activities, it'll be important in the future to use direct measures of both anxiety, but also environmental variables. And as a trained environmental microbiologist, I'm particularly interested in some research that has shown that bacteria present in soil can lead to increases in serotonin, which gives us feelings of happiness, and see if this is partly why we get those mental health benefits from gardening. So I'd like to thank my RANG team, my collaborators here at the University of Maryland, in the College of Agriculture and Natural Resources and Extension, and the School of Public Health, as well as the students who have helped on this project. And I'd like to thank all of you as well for your time and attention. And this is my contact information if you want to follow up with us and follow along as we continue our work. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Rachel. And I am going to spot you. John, are you ready for your talk? Okay, we see the pictures. Good to go. And then you're going to want to unmute. And if you want to be on video, you'll have to turn your video on. I'll ask you to unmute here. There you go. All right.
Okay.
Perfect.
Good to be with you.
Thank you.
So I'm John Tronfeld, and I want to thank the Alumni Association and School of Public Health for inviting me today. And it's a special pleasure to be on the bill with Rachel. I've been following her research projects for some time. They're very exciting and really address a lot of important needs. So I'm going to talk about the Home and Garden Information Center, and I'm also going to try to represent the State Master Gardener Program as well. And I'd like to just share some gardening resources from University of Maryland Extension and a few spring gardening tips. And I wonder, maybe some of you recognize the photo or the setting for the photo here. I know everybody can see these are beets, and that is the Learning Garden in front of the School of Public Health on the College Park campus. So University of Maryland Extension Home and Garden Information Center's mission is to provide up-to-date science-based information and resources to help gardeners throughout the state. We have lots of topical information on gardening, landscaping, pest management, and really our overall goal is to help people make good decisions outside when they're managing their land, even if it's a little postage stamp size, bit of land at a townhouse or a large backyard garden. So to help people learn about and adopt sustainable gardening practices that will cause the least environmental harm as they do their gardening. So we get lots of folks coming to us for information, and they have lots of questions. This is just kind of a typical set of questions we might receive on a particular day. And of course, people are also interested in trying to address problems that they see out in their gardens. And so here are just 3 photos that one might find in a vegetable garden in Maryland. And the lower left here actually is a new, relatively new invasive pest from Europe, the Allium leaf miner. And these are leeks. And maybe some of you have actually seen this symptom on your leeks or garlic. In the upper right, we've got, let me see if I can grab my spotlight. We've got a zucchini fruit. I'm sure you've seen fruits that didn't form fully, and this is usually due to poor pollination. And then the basil, oh boy, the bane of basil gardeners for in recent years has been basil downy mildew, which is a pretty significant fungal disease. But luckily, in the last several years, we've had quite a few new resistant cultivars that we've been able to use in our gardens. So just some examples of the kinds of things that our clientele are interested in and ask us about. So all of our resources can be found on our homepage. We have a pretty extensive website. The interesting thing is it's all going to change a week from today. University of Maryland Extension is moving to the Drupal 8 platform. So all the URLs will be different, but if you use this URL next week, it should get you to our homepage. We have a lot of new and revised content. The navigation is different. So if you're used to using our website, it'll take some getting used to. I'd encourage people to use that search bar, the top right. And we've spent the last 3 or 4 months migrating many, many pages and photos. And I really think it's a big improvement over Drupal 7. So new website. We also do direct consultations with residents of Maryland and DC through Ask Extension. So this is actually it's a national platform that a lot of land-grant universities use. So folks can send us questions and up to 3 photos 24/7. We get back to them within a couple of days. Last year, because of COVID, we had this huge increase in the number of questions. And so as a result, this year we've enlisted and trained a nice core of Master Gardener volunteers and field faculty to help us answer questions in 2021. But please do send us your questions. We also have a really terrific blog, Maryland Grows. We have articles written by field faculty, campus faculty, Master Gardener volunteers. They're usually 2 articles and post a week, lots of different topics. We had over 400,000 page views on this blog last year. So you can just type in Maryland Grows into your browser or go to our homepage and get to it. And so please check it out, and you might want to subscribe to it. Lots of good information. We have quite a few how-to videos on our YouTube channel. And they're mostly under 4 minutes. And so that's another good place to go for gardening information. And the Master Gardener program, for folks out there that like plants and people, you may like one more than the other, but if you're really into plants and you can at least tolerate people, I hope you like people, but this is a great program. And we have, these are just some of the major activities and project areas that the Master Gardeners across the state are involved with. And on the right is just a infographic from our annual report. And that also, the HGIC and Master Gardener annual report from 2020 is on our homepage. You can access it there. And this just really gives you a sense of the different ways that the Master Gardeners and their coordinators adapted to COVID. A lot more digital learning. They found ways to reach and teach folks, even though they couldn't be face-to-face. And this is the program that's near and dear to my heart, Grow It, Eat It. And this was started in response to the 2008 Great Recession. And it's a really good example of how HGIC and the Master Gardener program really work together. Our programs are really integrated. We share the same office space. Steph Pulley is the state coordinator for the Master Gardener program, and she and Jean Birchfield, the program management specialist, do an incredible job. So this is, Grow It, Eat It program, faculty train Master Gardeners, and the Master Gardeners are out there in the community teaching, running demo gardens, supporting school and community gardens, and lots of other types of projects. And this has just really expanded. Even without our ability to be face-to-face with folks, we've seen a huge increase, in interest, especially in food gardening. I think the national estimate is maybe as many as 16 million U.S. residents got into gardening last year. So now, just for a couple of tips and messages, this is probably something you've seen and read about. Can't wait. It's going to be a blast. It's going to be loud, but it's going to be fun. And we're all kind of looking forward to it. We actually have some cicadas from 1987 and 2004 in our freezer at work. That's how crazy we are about bugs. We have a lot of information on our cicadas webpage. I also wanted to point out there's a really cool new website called the Cicada Crew. It's a group of entomology department students under the tutelage of Mike Raup, the bug guy who many of you may know about, and Paula Shrewsbury, two extension entomologists. They created this really great page with not only good information, but they wanted me to let you know they've got merch. They've got all kinds of really cool things. I almost brought my new Brood 10 t-shirt that I bought from their website, but do check it out. Lots of good information on the cicadas that are coming. So last year, let's see, August, I think it was the 4th wettest on record for our region. We had the warmest July. And so we know climate change in the mid-Atlantic means warmer temperatures, especially night temperatures, more extreme weather events, more 2+ inch rain events. And so climate change is going to really, be affecting our gardens in a way. It already is. These are just some of the effects. And, we do have information on our website about different ways to mitigate and adapt. This is an example. If you have a spot in your garden that doesn't drain well, building up raised beds can really help you get above that issue. But it's very concerning, and we're continually looking for new ways to educate people about this, because I don't think a lot of people still understand that it is here and it's happening. So one of the ways we can make our gardens more climate resilient is by paying more attention to the soil, protecting it, improving it. So we see here in the lower left, crimson clover is an excellent cover crop to plant in the fall. We're trying to keep as many plants growing in the soil for as long as possible. So the cover crops can protect the soil from erosion and from nutrient runoff. During the growing season, we can use all kinds of available materials, in this case, grass clippings, as a mulch around our plants. And finally, if we're going to start a new bed, we don't need to go and rent or borrow a tiller. Just by laying down sections of newspaper or cardboard and then covering that with a lot of compost, we can create instant raised beds and actually plant seeds or transplants right into that compost. We have lots of information on all these topics on the website. So taking care of the soil, it's one of the things our master gardeners out in the field spend a lot of time talking to people about: testing soil, adding organic matter, improving soil. A lot of people are interested in pollinators, bringing them into the landscape. And this is another one of our big messages to the public, and that is, plant a wide variety of flowering plants to attract, bees, butterflies, little wasp parasitoids. And if we can reduce pesticide use, we can conserve our natural enemies. So I don't know how many people have seen assassin bugs. This is a wheel bug, a type of assassin bug. It's a great predator. And then a stink bug nymph. It's a predator, and there it is consuming the cross-striped caterpillar. So this is on a kale plant. So, you know, we really try to train people to turn those leaves over, look for what's going on underneath. A lot of times you can actually observe really cool interactions between insects, especially when the predators are taking out the pest insects that we're concerned with. Now, I'm sure a lot of people have container gardens, and this trend just keeps going up, up, up. There are lots of ways to have successful container gardens around your house. This is one example. Oops, sorry about that. This is the University of Maryland salad table that we came up with years ago. It's an open source project. It's just a shallow frame that's elevated, so it enables people to grow leafy greens and other vegetables at waist level. Reuse storage containers, in this case, a deep container being used to grow carrots. And then on the right, this is actually a bucket in bucket self-watering container. So it's 2 5-gallon buckets nested so that there's a water reservoir at the bottom of the container. So we're not losing any nutrients through drainage holes. It's super effective. You can see by the yield on this gypsy pepper plant how well it can work. So lots of information on our website about, you know, how to do container gardening. And then the last thing I want to leave you with is a tip I've been trying to pass along for years, and I think I'm only semi-successful. I think a lot of people have this idea that their tomatoes need to be bursting, literally, with flavor on the vine before they should be picked. And you know, I got into all this by being a commercial grower. And with our typical home garden type of tomatoes that we're growing, if you can train yourself to pick them when they're just barely turning color and bring them indoors, they ripen quickly, and you will not see any loss in eating quality. The texture, the flavor is absolutely as good as if you leave it on the vine. I think psychologically people just can't wrap their heads around that, but it's true. And what we're doing is we're avoiding all these problems that occur when tomatoes really begin to ripen and soften. So that's my my message to folks. I hope you'll try that out this year. And I think that's it.
Well, thank you. I think just the tomato tip alone was worth the whole thing.
There you go.
I'm writing down crimson clover and ripened tomatoes off the vine. So I actually have a couple questions. If anyone has any questions from the audience, feel free to send them in. I had a couple questions while I was watching or listening. One was for Rachel. I was just wondering if you have plans to do additional research, like research 2.0, where you would get like even more specific into, you know, specific nature related stress relievers or gardening techniques where it's like, well, mulching, you know, you can spend a lot more time thinking about things while, you know, just a question.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And of course, you know, research always leads to more research because as you find answers, you also develop more questions. So definitely, I think I have plans for research like 2.0 through 10.0 times, you know, 100. But definitely, I mean, although we know that there are all of these mental and physical benefits from gardening, we really don't know exactly what it is about gardening that provides those benefits. And, you know, it is a growing area of interest. And I was just reading a study that was just published that was, you know, trying to parse that out. Is it, like John was saying about master gardeners, is it about gardening with other people? Is it about the size of your space? And at least that study, it was a bit of a smaller study, it was about 300 people. They found that there were no differences in the health benefits, whether you were gardening alone or with someone in your household. But we know that there's other research that shows that when you garden socially, like at a community garden, that there are other benefits. So I think, once research restrictions loosen up a bit, and hopefully, we're seeing some light at the end of the tunnel with the pandemic, I would love to get out there and have some direct measures. And that's kind of where I'm trying to go with the Arboretum on campus, because we know we have so many volunteers already who are doing different types of jobs. So it would be really interesting to see exactly what you're saying, Kara. Like, is it touching mulch? Are you gardening with bare hands versus gloves? Is it something about the exposure to the soil? Is it something about the frequency with which you garden? So these are all really interesting questions that I'd love to explore.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah, I know that my mom's garden had never looked better when she was locked up and doing that 24 hours a day during quarantine. But we have a couple more questions. For Rachel, could you elaborate a little bit on your research about the serotonin in the soil?
Sure. So I can't take credit for that. That is not my research. That is just some published research, actually, from a researcher in the UK. But he identified a specific type of bacteria in the soil, which he was able to prove with some animal studies increased serotonin levels. So as far as I did, quick literature review, there hasn't been anything done looking at the presence of that bacteria and human serotonin levels. But that's the type of work that I'd be interested in. I think people might be familiar with the idea of, microbiomes and how we all have these bacteria, which we all live harmoniously with, and that there are good bacteria as well as, harmful bacteria, and that it might be that some of the bacteria that are in the environment are partly why we're seeing these health benefits.
Thank you. And then I have a question for John. I generally, I can't really grow too many things. I like the ones where it's like looks dry and dead, and then you put a little water on it and then they come back to life, like indoor plants. So that's me. But I've attempted outdoor gardening, and I was wondering, what should we be planting now? Or are we too late to be planting? I guess you're never too late to be planting. And then does climate change affect like the timing of planting things? Like, should you wait now because the ground is warmer, so wait to put the tulips in and whatever?
Sure.
That's my question. Yeah. A rough question.
No, well, right. So if you're doing vegetable gardening, if you can get into the soil, as long as the soil's dry enough and the ground's prepared, you can plant peas and onions and even salad greens. It's time if you can get out there to do it. And as far as the season, it has gotten longer. A lot of people that are really into their vegetable gardens have been able to grow crops, especially leafy greens, all the way into December and even over winter. Some greens like kale, spinach, arugula. But the thing about spring planting is I always tell people, just keep your eye on the weather forecast. That's the key thing, because we can have 30-degree, changes in temperature within a day or two. And so, Mother's Day is still the time when a lot of people will put out the warm season, the tender plants that can't tolerate frost. So I don't think planting dates are changing a little bit, but I wouldn't get too aggressive in planting too early. Just keep an eye on the weather.
Thanks. Well, that actually brings us exactly to 45 minutes, which was our intention here. And we appreciate everything that you guys put forth today. If anyone has any additional questions, we can probably take a couple more, but any last words from our speakers? Anything else you want to say? Just go Terps, I guess. Nothing.
So
All right.
Terps, I'll just say everybody for your attention. And I think, the research shows the more you can get outside, the better it is. So try to take advantage of the good weather.
Yeah, have a great gardening season.
That's right. Yeah. And it's about time for my daily walk. I'm sure everyone else is coming around the corner too. Well, thank you, everyone. This actually is our last event during our Home 101 series. This was the finale. So we appreciate everyone's participation. I see a lot of familiar names and faces in the chat. So thanks to everyone who has signed on all throughout the week. And just keep an eye out for our other programming from the Alumni Association. And as always, go Terps. Thanks, guys. Have a good one.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.